We are inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak. Oh, so close to training camp. We're going to be talking about camp battles, offense, defense, special teams.
We're gonna do the first segment's going to be the offense, and then the last segment's going to be defense and special teams. We don't really need to talk about special teams that much. We know what the position battles are going to be. I'm not that excited to watch them. There's kind of just something that's there. Like they're not. It's not like we're going to be waiting with bated breath to watch. Oh, Blake Grupe's kicking. Everyone get out there. But it will be something to track. I think that's a good way to put it. Is I will be tracking the kicking competition. I will be watching some of these other position battles very closely and taking notes, and it's going to matter throughout the entirety of camp. So we're going to go through that. We're going to start with offense, and let's start with the ones that we don't need to think about, right? I made a list and I kind of broke them down by like what's settled and this and that, what's mostly settled, and then what's wide open. And so the ones that are settled completely, we don't have to talk about it. Concrete. QB1, Derek Carr, going to be there. No question. Right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk. Center, Eric McCoy. No question. Those three positions completely settled as they should be. Like some of these, you kind of look at it like it's settled unless, it's settled. Like Alvin Kamara is the RB1 unless he comes out and just looks slow, and then Kendre Miller just looks like a star. And then you could see like, wow, maybe Alvin's grasp on that role is slightly less strong considering he might be gone for 6 games. And what happens when he comes back, right? So to me, that's not concrete. Whereas Derek Carr being QB1 is as concrete as it gets. So like Derek Carr, Ryan Ramczyk, Eric McCoy, those are 3 positions that I don't care what happens. You don't even have to watch it. That position battle is settled.
I'm assuming you're leaving guys obviously like a Ruiz and Pete off just because of injury and the unknown there.
Yes, and also because they did draft Nick Saldiveri. Yeah. So, like, I think Ruiz, his position is settled as long as he's healthy. I don't think that there's really a position battle going on. But Andrus Pete, I think there is a scenario where he loses his job if he just doesn't look good, if he looks slow, and then Nick Saldiveri kind of blows everyone out of the water. Maybe, right? So it's like I have it as virtually settled, but not completely. Like there is a very slim chance. So like that's kind of why I have them there. QB2, kind of similar. I have it as basically settled, which is Jameis, Jake Haener. If we're seeing a guy who's not getting reps during minicamp because they want to give Taysom Hill reps, they're not really looking at him as the backup. So I don't think it's a concrete situation, but I don't think it's something you have to watch.
Not year 1 for Haener. If there was a year 2 battle with him, that'd be a different story. Obviously,
next year it's definitely going to be a question. This year, I think you've pretty much got it settled.
Yeah.
And then I already explained this, but Alvin Kamara settled, but it's an unsettled situation, right? Like I don't think anyone questions whether he's talent wise the RB1, but you never know. Going up, Chris Olave and Mike Thomas at the Z and the X. Again, settled in terms of if Mike Thomas is healthy, cool. I actually think we're looking at a position battle. The question is, if someone is battling with Mike Thomas, who is it? Rashid Shaheed worked a lot at the X last year, but I don't think he's the guy you would have at the X. And I don't look at it as wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Because that's not how really NFL teams operate. That's a fantasy football way of looking at things.
Right.
You're talking X receiver, the Z receiver, and the slot receiver. And so Chris Olave, to me, is the Z. The guy who's lining up across from Mike Thomas or whoever is the X and is working in combination with the slot receiver and the tight end. The X receiver stands by himself. It's one-on-one matchups and has to win them. And so I think in that sense, those are settled. So beyond that, like that's the last really truly settled position. We have tight ends here too, but I'll go through that. But what do you think about that?
To me, the only questions with wide receiver is really more on the depth at the position kind of thing. I think the top end, we know what it is if the guys are going to be healthy. But does anyone unseat Traquan? Can Keith Kirkwood make more of an impact? I mean, what are we going to see from the rookie and A.T. Perry, or even Brian Edwards, James Washington? There's a lot of names that there's like I said, going to be just fighting for depth on this squad.
Yeah, and when I went through this, it kind of emerged to me that like there aren't that many exciting position battles to watch on the offense. Like Trevor Penning versus his own body is one of
Yes,
the interesting position battles,
for
and
sure.
he is on this list reasonably high, and I have it as mostly settled because I think you do want to go into this season with Trevor Penning as your left tackle, but James Hurst could be that guy if you need it. So there's something of a position battle there, although I don't think it's really a battle. I think this team is leaning on Trevor Penning, and as if he's battling himself. That's the only way I can describe it. Like James Hurst is not going to do anything that makes you say, well, he's the real starting left tackle. It's all a question of whether Trevor can do enough on his own. The tight ends is similar to me in the sense that I don't look at it as T1, T2. I look at it as, okay, this is going to be a situation kind of like the Saints had with Josh Hill and Jared Cook. And you're going to have a move tight end, and you're going to have a blocking tight end, and maybe a third tight end. But so as a move tight end, I think Juwan Johnson has it basically locked up. The second tight end position, I think there is a bit more of a question in terms of the blocking tight end. I think Foster Moreau has a very big lead on that, but there is going to be something. It's like, okay, if Miller Forrestall, who I know nothing about, looks great and is the better player throughout camp, I think there's a chance that he wins that job. Same with Jesse James. So I think that is going to be something. And then you're like, secondarily, you're also saying, okay, behind those two, who is that third guy? Is it Lucas Krull? Is it Miller Forrestall? Is it Jesse James? I don't even put Taysom Hill in that conversation because I don't know what position you want to call Taysom Hill, but he's going to make it. There's no question that's his role is going to exist. So I kind of put it as like, if you want to keep an extra tight end, who's it going to be? And so those are the two positions that I'm looking at there.
Yeah, for me too, I feel like Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau are pretty strong as you're in that group at least. And to make that third tight end to make up that group, yeah, is it going to be a Jesse James or a Lucas Krull is of interest to me. We talked to James a little bit this offseason, and he has brought up the fact of being with a team to start camp being big for him. We'll see how that plays out. Definitely interested to see what this big dude has to offer, something that we know this team needs, that blocking tight end. And yeah, Foster Moreau can be that guy, but he's not, I wouldn't say, your go-to number one blocking tight end option kind of thing.
And to use a Bobby Hebert term, like Jesse James has the skins on the wall. Like he has done it, right? Like he's had a reasonably successful career. You've seen him have success in Pittsburgh, not so much the last few years. So I think that does, just kind of the veteran nature of what he's bringing in is going to be helpful to him when he's compared to like a guy like a Lucas Krull, who might have more upside, but do you trust him to put him on the field now? That's a good question.
Yeah, and we saw him obviously flash, and everyone got excited over it. We'll see more come training camp, but that's definitely something one of the camp battles to watch for. I think
they've liked him and they kept him around, and so that's usually a good sign. So these are the top three, and I'm not saying every single position on this list, but my top three, starting with the third most interesting, going to the most interesting. So backup, guard, center, tackle. Basically, who is your second string offensive line? And I think for this to be the third most interesting position battle tells you that there are not a ton of exciting position battles to watch. In terms of, okay, are they going to start? Are they going to be on the team versus not? So you're talking about
what about Adam Prentice versus Jake Baragas?
Ooh, yeah, no, not doing that. Vargas, but so right now I think you're talking about guys like Nick Saldiveri, Landon Young, Calvin Throckmorton. So James Hurst is going to be there, right? Like he's going to be one of those backups. So I don't think that he's even in this position battle, but. Right. Those three guys are kind of interesting. Like I think Saldiveri, it's really just going to be whether he is relied upon as a rookie versus he's going to make this roster one way or the other. I think Billy Price has a chance to unseat a guy like a Calvin Throckmorton, or who's your backup who can be you're also your backup center. I think being able to save that roster spot might help him. And then a Storm Norton, I think, is interesting too. Who's your backup tackle? But yeah, how that second string offensive line builds out, and it's pretty easy to track. So I think that's going to be something to watch. Like a guy like Yasir Duran already got cut. So that's going to be interesting only so far as it is interesting to watch offensive linemen, which it's not.
Especially
Outside
in the
of
early
the padded
practice because they're unpadded too.
Right. Padded practices, you can get a good look at it. And those are the only times I'm willing to make a strong opinion about an offensive or defensive lineman is during padded practices. Like I can make opinions about safeties and wide receivers and running backs in t-shirts and shorts and even tight ends to some extent. But I'm not going to tell you that I watched an unpadded practice and I feel like, so-and-so is the best offensive lineman on the team. I'm not going to do it.
Or that's it. Can't. Penning, I've seen enough. Penning's a bust after day 2.
Penning is slightly different in the sense that his footwork is so important.
Yeah.
And so you can watch his footwork and say, okay, he's getting better. But, like I know what he can do when the pads come on. It's really a question of whether he can get the intangible stuff or the technical stuff down. So that's interesting. But yeah, that's my number 3 position battle.
For the offense, right? Yeah. Okay. The thing with offense, like you mentioned, it might not be as interesting because I don't feel like that there are really starting jobs up for grabs.
No, not really. And these next 2 are not starting jobs either. So my top 3 position battles on offense are for backup roles. Now this one is the closest to a starting role, this next one. And I still think it's kind of cut and dried to an extent. So it's not as exciting, but it's going to be RB2. And when I say it's close to a starting job, because whoever this is the guy you're starting technically when Alvin Kamara is inevitably suspended. So, this is an important battle, right? And I think it's between Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams. I think Jamal Williams probably has the early lead, but what if, and I don't think it's crazy to think that Kendre Miller comes out and just looks like a stud and plays in a way that's like, Alvin's missing the first 6 games. Like, we got to get this guy on the field as much as possible. And like, I expect Jamal to be a quality player too, but is he the guy who you're going to have as a 3-down back? Is he a guy who you're going to have on early downs and short yardage? And then you give everything else to Kendre. Does Kendre just look like he needs time? Is he not reliable? So those are the type of things I'm watching. And I think, because I'm not watching Jamal relative to Alvin in these practices. I'm watching Jamal relative to Kendre Miller when Kendre hopefully gets on the field to start camp, because that's the tier that I think could adjust. And it's going to be something that we watch. There's also going to be an RB3 question behind whoever that is. So like, does Eno Benjamin maybe steal that last spot when Alvin is out and then revert to the practice squad when he comes back? I don't know, but to me, that's not that exciting.
I do think I love the fact that you put the running back 2 battle in here, because it is important, and there's no it's not out of the question for the rookie in Miller to come through and supplant Williams. We saw Alvin his rookie year basically make a future Hall of Famer useless. I mean, the team was moved on from him with Adrian Peterson, so why wouldn't they be willing to do that again?
Everyone was so excited about Adrian Peterson.
Oh, for sure. AD all day, Adrian Peterson.
They had that meme where he's like mean mugging Sean Payton.
I love it.
Yeah. No, right, exactly. And then when Alvin comes back, is it Jamal or is it Kendre who is kind of that go-to? Because you don't usually run 3 running backs. You don't usually have a stable of running backs in the NFL like that. You want 3 that you trust so that if one gets hurt, you still have 2. But you don't typically see a third running, you're not splitting up the carries that much. Maybe 1 or 2 carries a game, maybe a third down work if someone's in a tent, right? And so I think that's going to be the question. But yeah, so that probably should be 1, but wide receivers are just more fun to me because they do more in these practices, like they do one-on-one drills and stuff like that. So in terms of exciting, I'm going to rank that number 1, which is the wide receiver 4-5.
Yeah.
Not 6. And I don't include 6 because to me, that's like someone like Kiki Kuti and Lynn Bowden Jr., who are battling, but they're not battling to be the wide receiver 6 and be like, well, he's a great wide receiver. We need him as our 6th wide receiver. They're battling on special teams, and they'll make the team as the wide receiver 6. Right?
Yeah, and in this battle, honestly, merits of interest just because he has that versatility to be that running back or wide receiver. So I'm curious to see if he can stick around. We've seen a little bit from him. But yeah, there's a bunch of new names to the mix here with Washington, Edwards, and Kuti. And we haven't seen anything from really Kawan Baker. We kind of talked about that during the Madden rankings. What is he capable of?
Yeah, the players I have listed here are Traquan Smith, who I think is probably, if you had to pick an early leader for the 4 spot, it would be Traquan, just because of what he's done. And I think there's a baseline there that is attractive. Like even you go back to the Madden ratings from the last episode, like he's rated at a 75. Like there is some appreciation there for the fact that he's a high floor player, very low ceiling. But when you're looking at depth, high floor is kind of what you're looking for. And then, Kirk Merritt, as you mentioned, James Washington, I think is intriguing. Another veteran player who has a lot of speed, can do things downfield that might be attractive. Maybe you keep him around. A.T. Perry is the guy you probably want to see in that wide in terms of like he's a rookie that you drafted. You don't want to cut him, but I think he's going to have to earn it. And then, Brian Edwards is probably the last one there. And Kawan Baker, he's going to have a hard time doing anything to stand out, but he is on that list too.
And just he hasn't done anything thus far, I feel like, to stand out in practices. So I don't know what's going to change either.
No, but I would say the same thing about all these guys.
Well, obviously the other, the 3 we haven't seen at all. Here at least.
Who?
In Edwards, Washington, and Kuti.
We've seen them. You mean at camp?
Yeah, like a brief sample. So I'm talking like now come training camp when, pads are on, it gets real.
Oh,
none of this mini camp, voluntary or mandatory stuff.
But I would say the same thing about A.T. Perry, right? Like I don't think we've seen a lot out of any of them. And so I think that's when I say that when I'm ranking these kind of by excitement level, it's because, again, like I said, the wide receivers are the most interesting thing to watch at camp, right? Because you can see what's happening. They do the 1-on-1 drills. They do the 7-on-7s. So it's just like you get a really good look at what's going on. And that's why guys get excited about who is that wide receiver that everyone fell in love with and then got cut. Emmanuel Butler.
There you go.
It's why you have those guys, because wide receiver is a really easy position to sink your teeth into. It's not happening a mile away. It's not happening. The pads aren't as necessary.
What's wild is Butler's not even in the NFL.
No, I have no idea where he is. I hope he's okay wherever he is. But yeah, so that's it. And again, like Mike Thomas, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, I don't think there's really a battle going on there. It's development. Right. Behind them is where the rubber really starts to hit the road. So
I guess maybe you could consider that, with Shaheed, is he more valuable in that, the return role, and they want to get somebody else more snaps at the third wide receiver option. But I don't know who that would be.
I think if they did that, people would riot. And in today's NFL, no way. If you have a guy who can contribute the way he can at the wide receiver position, like he is going to be the top return option. And I don't think it's more of he's more valuable there than it is what is a reasonable workload to give a young player. How much are you going to ask him to do, and how much can you expect him to do without getting hurt? I think probably if your goal is to have him be kind of slot option for a majority of the season, more so than Chris Olave and maybe even Mike Thomas, you need to have a option there who can take on that role, just to mitigate that snap count somewhat. So I think that's a good point. I think maybe like if James Washington can be a slot receiver, maybe that's something. So that's something to consider in that next battle. But again, that's the wide receiver 4-5. But that's my rankings for these position battles. And as you can probably tell, my interest level will be much higher on the defense.
No, and I hear you. And it's kind of funny to think that, with all the, every year, obviously new talent coming in and all, but, we look pretty set on offense as long as everybody comes into camp healthy and ready to go.
Yeah. Kind of like I said this with Traquan, like the offense needs to be just like Traquan is high floor, maybe low ceiling, need a high floor. I would love for the ceiling to be high, but the floor needs to be high. Like you can't have just dud offensive performances. I don't need you to go out and drop 40 points for this team to win, but I do need you to be competitive and control the ball. And that's like we talk about the Taysom Hill quarterback experience. And one of the things you can say about that is the baseline was reasonably high. You knew that team was going to control the ball. You knew they were going to put some points up and give your defense a number that say, go protect this. And you're going to eliminate the turnovers. You're going to eliminate the risky plays. And you're going to do that. I don't think you need to go that far with the current offense, but you do need to set a baseline that is reasonable. And I don't think that was the case enough of the time last year. And yeah, if the defense gets hurt and you deal with a lot of the same things you saw last year, you might end up asking more from this offense. But that's like when I say it's not as exciting, I say that in a positive way, that like I don't need this offense to be exciting. I need it to execute. And I think that's kind of what you see when you look at all of these position battles. You're like, yeah, okay, that's pretty settled. Yeah, maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, and I thought you were just saying not that interesting because you're talking about watching offensive linemen practice.
Well, that too. I'm talking about more the season than the practice. But
no,
yeah,
definitely.
I got what you're saying. But all right, anything else you want to add there before we move on?
No, just waiting for obviously the a ruling from the NFL sooner than later would help for the Alvin Kamara situation too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be nice to know, but I think it doesn't really affect the next couple months in the sense that whether it's 4, whether it's 6, whether it's 8, you're kind of looking at things the same way, and you're just like, okay, who's gonna take over the heaviest workload? Who's gonna be? How are we gonna divvy up that work? And yeah, anyway, so it would be nice to just have a resolution so that we're not constantly asking the question. But I don't think it changes that
you're right.
much.
Because we know game 1 pretty much you're not going to have them.
You're expecting not to have them.
Yes,
if you do, and if something crazy happens and maybe he doesn't get suspended, which I think is insanely unlikely, but like that's a great problem to have, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, we were promising you work, but then sorry, Alvin's here.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's all right. You're young. We'll franchise tag you. Oh wait, we can't.
Ouch.
Yeah. Right, that's a different rant. Keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back. One more segment, getting us one segment closer to the start of training camp. Kind of like Christmas, where you're like, oh, it's like 3 sleeps, and then it's Christmas. It's like 7 sleeps, and then it's start of training camp. I do kind of treat it that way because it's like complete shift. It's like going from 0 to 100, and then it does not slow down. Like I kind of treat the start of training camp as the start of the season. I know most Saints fans probably think like, man, it's like still months away. To me, the season starts on Wednesday.
Absolutely, and then obviously with training camp bleeds into the preseason, and preseason with the regular season. But yeah, once training camp starts, there's no stopping for us.
I say that, but like the last couple of years, and I actually do appreciate this change by the NFL as much as I think the NFL does nothing to help its teams and players in any substantive way. That week off at the end of like that open week in the final week of the preseason is a very nice change for me personally, and I think the players appreciate it too, just to kind of reset.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah, like going straight from the preseason into week one, I feel like it's really difficult to kind of mark off, okay, the season is starting. But like that's a nice kind of 13-day, just reset process. So, I mean, I'm going to go on vacation during that week. Like that's all you can ask for is a couple days. But we're getting into training camp. We went through the offensive position battles in the first segment. In this segment, we're going to go through the defensive position battles. And just like in the first segment, I'm going to list right here the settled position battles, which there's a lot of them, but then like there's less kind of mostly settled. It's either concrete or open. And so this one, I have 5 positions that are listed as just concrete. Don't even need to talk about them. Hopefully they get better or hopefully they do well, but they're not competing with anyone for these jobs. Right defensive end, he can move, but right defensive end, Cam Jordan, no question. CB1, Marshawn Lattimore, no question. Mike linebacker, Demario Davis, no question. Free safety, whatever safety, it's tough because I don't think either Marcus May or Tyrann Mathieu is technically the free safety, but I think Tyrann kind of is more of that because he just kind of moves around a lot. But either way, whatever position safety you want to call him, one of the 2 safeties, Tyrann Mathieu, concrete, no question. And then Pete Werner, the will linebacker, concrete, no question. All of those positions, while it would be nice to see someone show up and push them, there's no position battle going on. Those are locked in.
Would you even put Marcus May, did you say, in that category or no?
No.
I just don't know who's there that's really going to push him. I hear you.
Concrete to me, set in stone. Nothing could happen from a competitive perspective to get them to lose that job, right? Like no one could show up and play out of their mind good and beat them out. I think for Marcus, I have it as mostly settled. But if a guy like Jordan Howden or a Smoke Monday or somebody just shows up in the preseason and balls out while Marcus May looks sketchy, while he gets hurt and just kind of isn't available the way that he was last year, or gets suspended for a couple games and suddenly it's like, well, this guy's playing better anyway. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. But to me, there is a possibility, like a small possibility, which is what keeps him out of the concrete group,
right,
and is in the mostly settled group, which is very close, right?
He's in the wet concrete.
Yes, yeah, the concrete hasn't dried. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, so the wet concrete group, because it's still in the mixing truck, kind of spinning around. Defensive tackle, so defensive tackle stuff too, because I think there are roles kind of like tight end where for the run stuffer defensive tackle role, because you need one of those. You need one like double team eating run stuffer. That's what Shai Tuttle was last year, I think, to an extent. And I think this year it's Colin Saunders. Again, mostly settled. Malcolm Roach would probably be the guy that pushes him in that position. Slot cornerback, again, mostly settled. Bradley Roby with Ugo Amadi and maybe Alontae Taylor pushing him if Alontae Taylor doesn't win another position battle. Again, we'll get into that. And then the other one, as you mentioned, the other safety, Marcus May, mostly settled, with Jordan Howden being the most likely push from behind of like someone who's trying to chase him. Maybe Jonathan Abram, but I don't think that. Like, I think Jonathan Abram could make the roster, but I think he's not really a guy you look at like, oh, he's going to be competing for that starting job, just like kind of Justin Evans last year.
Yeah, the Howden Abram at safety. That's definitely one to watch. I agree there because that's why I had asked about what do you think about May basically being in that drying concrete, because there really isn't much proven behind him.
No, yeah, and that's up here on my list. There's one other that's mostly settled, but it's kind of weird because you don't use it, and it's the Sam linebacker position. Like, I imagine that Zach Bond's going to be the Sam linebacker,
right?
But it's like from an excitement level perspective, it's like I just don't care because you don't use that position.
No, right?
Like, I think like that's the least important position battle you're going to have. And I like even like Caden Ellis was the Sam linebacker last year, but I didn't really care about that. I cared about whether he seemed like he had the versatility. And it's something we talked about with Scott Shanley. in the last episode. It's like, does he have the versatility to go from Sam to somewhere else? I don't think Zach Bond does. So I don't know. But if, maybe an Anthony Orji, maybe a DeMarco Jackson could jump in and steal that spot from him. I don't know. Either way, it's mostly settled. I think that's going to be Zach's job.
It's weird to think that Bond's heading into year 4, and I really still don't know who he is, if you know what I mean.
No. I think actually we do know who he is, and it's just not a guy you're going to see a lot of during games.
Right.
I kind of feel like I want to see him in a 3-4 scheme, and to get to be like an outside linebacker, like an actual outside linebacker, and rush the passer, and maybe his coverage requests are so low that it doesn't become an issue. I just don't think he works on a 4-3. And maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes somewhere else and has success, at least a reasonable success, whereas he just doesn't fit. But he's under contract anyway. So, but yeah.
No, I'm on board there too, where it doesn't seem like, you can get the, the round peg in the square hole kind of deal.
I agree. The next one is kind of a weird one because I call this position the PJ. Because it doesn't technically exist, but I think this is a position that the Saints value, which is a swing corner safety. And so I call it the PJ because that's what PJ has done for years. They don't have him around anymore. I don't think they're going to stop utilizing that kind of swing position.
Right.
So who could it be? And to me, the most obvious option would be Lonnie Johnson. But I think it's an open competition for whoever you think could do that. I don't think Jonathan Abram could play corner. And so that kind of limits him. Jordan Howden, I don't know either. So, I think that's kind of what you're watching. Maybe one of these younger defensive backs, maybe an Anthony Johnson, maybe a Troy Pride, right, could show up and push Alani. But I think that is very much a position that the Saints value. And so whether it's listed on the roster or not, to me, that's a position battle.
Yeah, and that's a guy that obviously not on this roster anymore. And I know Saints fans won't really care, but there was value in that, like you said, because of that versatility there from PJ.
They won games because of his ability to just go outside and play corner first at a moment's notice. That week 4 against the Lions in 2020. You didn't have, I think you ended up starting Patrick Robinson and PJ Williams out wide, and you won that game. It's just the ability to be able to do that. It makes life so much easier on the defensive coordinator. And I think that's why you have it. And there's no reason not to have it. You have all of these players. You want them to be flexible. Getting down? Okay. Such a goober.
She's like, take me out.
Yes, yeah, I think so. You want a hug? You want to come up? Want to say hi to Steve? Okay. This is how she likes. She likes to sit in my lap. Oh, don't mess with the mic.
Professional broadcaster already.
I call it like giving hugs. She likes to just give hugs. Like she'll come up in your lap and just kind of lay there. Okay. But she's too big to jump in your lap. Like she'll just kind of like put her legs on you and her big old head. All right. So the next position up, which is very similar but more safety specific, is kind of, I don't even know. Again, I don't know what to call this position, but it's like safety the third safety, right? The top backup for when your safety goes down, when a Tyrann Mathieu or a Marcus May misses time, who goes in? Last year was Justin Evans, and this is also a position where you probably expect them to have an impact in the slot. Like if you do need to back up Bradley Roby in the slot, who is it? Might be this position. So to me right now, that's Jordan Howden. Jonathan Abram is another guy who you could see competing here. Smoke Monday is a guy who you could see competing here. But I do think that, again, kind of like the PJ, as I'm talking about, is a position. That's a position. And so that's going to be interesting. And I think Jordan Howden has the benefit of being a draft pick and also has the benefit of looking pretty good. So I don't know how much of a battle it's going to be, but that's going to be something that you have to watch.
Definitely interested to see more in a guy like Ugo Amadi too.
Yes.
We've seen a little bit but yet nothing really that is going to make you scream and shout right now when we haven't seen anything in pads, but definitely see that the whole safety after the starters is definitely an issue where it's got to sort itself out with the depth chart.
Yeah, and Ugo could also be the PJ competition, right? Like Ugo has been the backup slot in these practices so far behind Bradley Roby. So to me, that's definitely one that you look at as okay, maybe he can compete.
Could Smoke be that swing guy, or you don't think so?
Yeah, he can't play corner. He can't
Too
play
big,
outside.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the. Yeah, he's not that type of player. But he could definitely be that safety. So that's just one to watch.
Right.
And then like this is not including special teams where those position battles are kind of held separately. But it's just hard to include here in this kind of breakdown.
Gotcha.
All right, going forward. So the other defensive tackle, the one that's not Colin Saunders. So right now, I'd say it's probably Nathan Shepard, just because you paid him, you brought him in for a reason, you like him. But he's going to get pushed by Brian Brzee, by Malcolm Roach. Maybe another defensive tackle steps into that mix. But that's definitely going to be one that you watch closely, because I think a lot of people would like to see Brian Brzee win that job. And it's just a question to me of whether he can play early downs. I think he's going to be a rundowns player early in his career, but that's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, the defensive line is going to be, I guess, one of those you're keeping a close eye on, just because of obviously all the new additions there too. And the only thing, really said is, Cam is the guy. And after that, we think, with Shepard and Saunders, but what's going to happen with a Brzee? We're hoping, and that he can take that starting position right off the bat. But I think it's going to obviously take a little bit of time to get him more acclimated to the NFL.
Yeah, like it's probably not the most exciting position battle you've ever heard of, but there's position battles going on, right? So next up on this list, so I've reached the top 3 here. The nice thing is at least 2 of these are starters. So that's why they're the most exciting. This first one is kind of like on the offensive side where you had the wide receiver 4-5. Here I have the linebacker 4-5, which is, so you have this, whoever you name as your starter at Sam, and then obviously Demario Davis, Pete Werner at the mic and the will. Those are the 2 positions you're going to have on the field the most often. So the 4-5 to me is whoever's going to back up Demario and whoever is going to back up Pete Werner, because I think those have to be 2 different people. They don't have to be 2 different people, but last year was kind of weird where you had a 4-year player that you could plug in that you trusted. That's not going to be the case this year unless you bring in a veteran. So for right now, I kind of look at it as Anthony Orji and DeMarco Jackson, with whoever you want to include trying to supplant them in that role, whether it be an Andrew Dowell, whether it be a Nick Anderson, whether it be a Ty Connolly. No. Zach Connolly?
Who's
Connolly? Ty Summers is the Ty.
Ryan Connolly.
Connolly. Ty Connolly could be, whatever, Madden creative player.
There you go.
So that's who you're going to watch. And I still think that linebacker is a position where you could very much see a veteran addition. But that's what I'm looking like. I'm not worried about, kind of like at the running back position. I'm not watching how DeMarco Jackson matches up with a Demario Davis, right? That's not the competition. I'm watching how a DeMarco Jackson plays relative to an Anthony Orji or Nick Anderson. You get the idea.
Yeah, that's huge, because we've talked about it a ton. After Davis and Werner is just like a lot of questions at the linebacking group. Vaughn's not going to replace either one of those if there's an injury. So who ends up behind them is going to be big.
Probably not. Yeah,
what was that?
He's too big. I said maybe the Mike. He could not play well. If in a pinch, if you were desperate, I think it's possible that you throw Zach at the mic and say, hopefully this works. But I don't think you want to be in that position.
No, and then the questions are, you just have a lot of unproven talent trying to earn that spot there. So I know a lot of folks ask me about Nick Anderson, and it's just like, I haven't seen enough out the kid already, so I can't say yes or no definitively. But off the bat, like right now, if I had to, like you forced me to do a projection, I think if Nick's lucky, he'd be a practice squad guy.
I think he will be a practice squad guy. I think like he's a quality player and he works hard. I just think year one is going to be really tough for him to make up that gap in terms of being a hugely undersized linebacker.
Right.
It's hard for a rookie linebacker, period, to kind of stand up in the physicality of the NFL, let alone a guy who's 5'10". So yeah. Anyway, there's two more positions, and these are the real exciting position battles, just independently of anything else. These are the two camp position battles, offense or defense, that are the most exciting. And I put these on top of any on the offensive side. And the first one is who's starting at defensive end across from Cam Jordan. Here I have it listed as left defensive end. There's no reason that they couldn't adjust one way or the other. But I do think that Cam will traditionally play on the right side. And so right now I have Peyton Turner as kind of the first name on that line. And it really has nothing to do with what he has done. And it is exclusively about what I need him to do, which is I need him to play like a first-round pick. And so this is me kind of just forecasting that I want him to be the starter. That doesn't mean he will be, because he's going to be competing with Carl Granderson and Isaiah Foskey, I think, in terms of maybe he doesn't start, maybe one of these guys starts. It's probably a rotation either way. But to me, that's a huge position battle. And I wouldn't hate if Carl Granderson wins it. I wouldn't hate if Isaiah Foskey wins it. But if they do, that's going to be very disappointing for Peyton Turner, who is a guy who you would really like to get some contribution from.
Well, totally agree with you there. Tano Passanio, obviously a good rotational depth piece.
He's
not going to be your starter. But yeah, but
you don't want him to be. Again, like it's like, yeah, this is a competition, but at the same time, there are results that are bad results. And if Tano ends up being the starter, it's not because Tano magically became a different player than he has been the last 3 years. It means that none of these guys, with the exception of Carl Granderson, because Carl, I think, has a much lower expectation, but neither of these high draft picks panned out. And that's a problem, whether or not Tano plays really well or he doesn't.
No, the big deal is definitely what the heck are we going to see from Peyton Turner? Year one of Foskey, you're hoping that he becomes a contributor, can be in that rotation, but in no way do I expect him to win the starting gig out of camp.
Yeah, if Isaiah Foskey blows the doors off and is fantastic and wins that job, and Peyton Turner also plays well and he gets beat, great. If that's what happens, I'm okay with it, but it's unlikely. Like there's a lot of scenarios where Peyton Turner doesn't end up starting, and it's not because someone played out of their minds good. So yeah. Anyway, like Carl Granderson, I think he had a solid year. He ended up starting toward the end of the year, not necessarily because he was playing really well, even though he was playing well, but it was more because Marcus Davenport was not getting the job done. And you needed someone who would get the job done, and he did. But you would have much rather been in a situation where Marcus Davenport played really well.
Yeah, it'd have been nicer if Davenport had the 5.5, 6 sacks that, but that's not the case. And I think, we all joke, obviously, now that he's moved on and Marcus Davenport, that watch in Minnesota, he's going to have this huge clean bill of health and be available all the games.
I mean, I'm rooting for him. I don't want him to struggle. I like Marcus Davenport. But yeah, that would be annoying at minimum, just because of how frustrating it was.
Yeah, always a really nice, personable guy, really low key, not your high energy alpha that Cam Jordan is, but that's okay. That doesn't mean he can't be successful in the NFL. I'm definitely not going to call him a Cam Jordan type player, but we saw some really bright spots from Davenport. It was just really unfortunate the dude could just never stay on the field, and I don't know what happened last year with him.
Yeah, you could see the vision. The vision was always visible. It just at times felt really far away. I felt like I was squinting to, like, I think it's there. It is. Yeah, okay. But yeah. So one more position battle, and we can wrap this up. We've already talked about this, so I don't think we even need to talk about it that much. But it was the most exciting position battle to me at the end of minicamp, and it's still the most exciting position battle to me. And it is CB2. Again, this is a starter. So these last two position battles are for starting jobs, which, I don't think we have a lot of those, which is nice. That's a good thing. But that's going to be, to me personally, right now, I have Paulson Adebo first, and then I have a very close competition with Alontae Taylor. I think that Paulson has the starting experience advantage, and he looked really good in camp last year. I expect him to look really good in camp again. And this is a situation where it's very different from the right or the defensive end battle that we just talked about, in that I think there's a scenario where both guys play really, really good, and you just have to pick one.
Right, because no one's unseating Marshawn no matter what happens.
Well, knock on wood that he stays healthy, but yes, I mean, it's
right.
not going to be a quality of play issue with Marshawn. Let's put it that way. Yeah, and Bradley Roby seems entrenched in the slot. I think he's the slot. Whoever I've talked about this a couple times. I don't think the idea is going to be whoever wins this, the other guy plays the slot. I think Bradley Roby is going to be the slot corner.
Yeah, because we heard a little from Alontae, and not like he's saying he doesn't want to be the slot guy, but he's like, he'd prefer not to, kind of thing, where he's like, all right, I'm working there right now because they want me to, and I can do it, but I want to be that outside guy.
Yeah, I think it's not even about whether he wants to play the slot or not. It's that he wants to play outside. Right? I think he would rather be on the field than not on the field.
Sure.
So I think there is a scenario that could play out where right now I don't think there's a competition at slot corner. I do think that they want to make sure that Alontae is up on slot corner.
Yeah.
And then so I think what could happen is Paulson Adebo wins that job, and you start the season with Marshawn, Paulson, and Bradley. If Bradley struggles, right? Bradley's a veteran. He's getting older. Maybe he just doesn't have it left in him. And then, after 4 or 5 games, and you've gotten a chance to really incorporate Alontae into the slot and get him as up to speed as you can, maybe he takes over, right? But I don't think that it would be like a week 1 thing where you battle through the entirety of training camp, you pick one, and then all of a sudden it's like you play a different position now. No. We see injuries at cornerback all the time. I think that you will be perfectly fine knowing that you have a healthy backup outside corner who can take over for either Marshawn or Paulson or whoever, or Paulson takes over for Marshawn or Alontae when they get hurt, right? That sort of thing. But to me, that's like, if you are looking for just a straight up starting competition, that's the best one to watch.
Yeah, and I'm excited, obviously, year 2 of Alontae Taylor, just because this kid just wants more and more on his plate. It'll be interesting, like you mentioned. I agree with you. You got, the 3 corners with Lattimore, Adebo, and Roby. How do you work in a guy like Alontae Taylor into the mix? Does he end up becoming that? Maybe you use him as a safety, as a corner kind of thing. I just know you want a guy like that on the field more often than not, and I know he's going to be itching to get out there too. That whole thing, how it plays out, definitely the top position battle. I totally agree there. And with Adebo, man, we saw him really dominating in camp last year with pass breakups. The biggest thing for him now, can you turn those breakups maybe into a few more interceptions? And those takeaways are obviously key. We saw how they lacked last season. So anyway, any form that this team can get back into taking the ball away more is going to be a big plus.
And I think most of the people listening to this will probably disagree with me. And I like Alontae Taylor a lot. I think Alontae Taylor is going to be a good player in this league for a long time. I just think that this year specifically, this team likes Paulson Adebo. like they really do like Paulson Adebo, and Paulson had a really good camp last year. He dealt with an injury at the end of camp, and I think people underestimate how big of an impact that had on him early in the season. And when he came back, I think he had a lot of momentum, and the injury took a lot of that away. And then he came back week 5 and immediately was trying to chase down Tyler Lockett. And that's not a guy I want to match up with as I come off an ankle injury and am probably out of, and not in the great shape or the shape I want to be. And suddenly I have to start doing that. And yes, he got beat a couple times, which Yes, that happened. Then Marshawn gets hurt in that game, and suddenly Paulson Adebo is being asked to guard Marshawn's player, right? Like he is now the CB1 after 4 weeks of injury, and then after getting beat up by Tyler Lockett. And so you're asking him to guard DeAndre Hopkins and these guys, and that's asking a lot. And so yeah, week 13 he got beat by Mike Evans, and it's like there was very few times in that season where you got to see Paulson Adebo as the CB2 is my point. And I think that in the matchups he's supposed to be in across from Marshawn, I think that he's going to have a much better chance. Now, that CB2 job is also really fascinating because teams don't want to throw at Marshawn. So it gets run at a lot, right? Like it's really kind of fascinating because it's like, okay, who do you trust more in that scenario? And you could say Alante, you could say Paulson. I think both of them are going to be very good. But again, like I'm not going to hold a very frustrating season against Paulson because you saw what happened. It's not a mystery, and he's confident. He's coming back. I think he's going to win it, but I could be wrong. Either way, we'll find out.
And he was obviously nicked up too, dealing with some injuries. Who knows if he was even playing at full strength, yada, 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 whatever with him. But yeah, that just battle there. It only makes the Saints secondary group even better.
Yeah, and he gets beat. I think it's the big moments that frustrate me with Paulson, and I've said this in the past, like that big play to Cordell Patterson in his rookie season that cost the Saints a game. That big play to Mike Evans last year that cost the Saints a game. It was pass interference, but you get the idea. It happens too many times. I think AJ Brown got him too at one point, and yeah, he's got to get better at that. He's got to, I think he needs to get better at turning the ball over. He needs to get better at being less handsy down the field. But I think he is getting better. And so we'll see I think we'll see a very good version of Paulson this year. But either way, like that's going to be one that's going to be fun to watch. And so that's going to wrap it up for us with the position battles. It's funny. You look at it and it's like position battles are usually a lot more fun than this.
Right.
But I think it's a good sign, right? Like I think it's a good sign that you're not going into training camp being like the Saints are trying to figure out who's the starter at position. Like that's not a good thing. That's sometimes it is like cornerback I think is a good thing where you have too many good cornerbacks. In a lot of instances it's like you don't know if you have any and you end up starting guys like Delvin Breaux, and then the things go bad. That's not hate on Delvin Breaux, it's just that was a sad time for the secondary.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern with the team is along the offensive line, just because of injuries and what you're hoping you have at depth, I guess. But it's just how all of that is going to shake out going into the season, because yeah, obviously with the battle in the trenches is going to be key. And we saw the offensive line struggle last season, which didn't do Andy Dalton any favors.
Yeah, no, it's a good point because we kind of glossed over the offensive line in this whole thing, but it's because it's not really position battles. It's
right.
Like, again, it's like Trevor Penning. It's like, okay, this is a position battle where Trevor Penning is trying to beat himself from, like he's competing against himself. Same thing with Pete. Same thing with Ruiz. But yeah, if those guys are healthy and they play well, that's a great offensive line group. If they don't, if they're not, then yeah, I don't know. So yeah, but it's like, yeah, in the context of this question, which is who's competing for something, yeah, you kind of lose the offensive line. But I agree with you. It's one of the biggest questions and one of the most important questions that the Saints are going to have to answer.
No, and yeah, Wednesday the 26th, we'll be doing our attendance and seeing, all right, who's here and who's not. And yeah, I'm hoping I'm checking Trevor Penning as being a participant, because just need to see it from the rookie. I mean, there's so many times this team's put some investment in first round picks that just haven't turned out.
Nope. I agree. And like, again, we go back to the 2017 draft. One of the reasons this team had such a great run for that few years was they just loaded up and they didn't miss. And when you start missing, your depth takes a hit. When you start going all in on a Marcus Davenport, and then 3 years later, it's like, wow, that didn't work out. When you drafted Peyton Turner in the first round, it adds up, and you can only have so many mid to late round steals. And the Saints have been good in the second round, third round, fourth round, But it's like there's a reason that those first round picks are come at such a premium. It's because you expect to get starters, and you expect to get high level starters. And when you're not, things go bad. But yep,
definitely. So yeah, for Penning and Peyton Turner, I guess. So you said those are your big first round question marks going into this year.
And Brazil, but yeah, I mean, he's a rookie, so it's a little. He could struggle, and you could still be like, okay, we're
all right. He's growing, right?
Even like Cesar Ruiz, like he was solid last year, and that was such a big jump for him that it kind of felt like, man, what a huge season. And then it's like, but I need him to be consistent now. Like you can't take a step back, and like because I'm not convinced that he is out of the woods yet from a development perspective. But you were so happy to see him be a consistent piece on that offensive line that's like, I don't even know how good he actually was. I'm just comparing him to himself. So he's another one that it's like, yeah, it's a first round pick. If he regresses and struggles, then that could be another one. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that he is a for sure like hit in the draft either.
Right. No,
yeah,
totally.
That's where you're going. But all right, let's wrap that. What, you got some?
No, I was going to say, so we got 3 first rounders we got our eyes on that still have a lot of questions.
Sure do. Anyway, all right. Let's wrap that segment up. Let's wrap up this episode of Inside Black and Gold. Getting close to the start of training camp.
Football.
I'll stop doing this now. And yeah, real football, kind of real practice football. I don't know. It's not really real football. But I'm going to enjoy it. But all right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We went through a lot. We broke down all the position battles. Talked to Brooke Kirchhoffer. Thanks again, Brooke, for coming on. And yeah, until the next time, thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This is Inside Black and Gold. You can follow myself at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow Steve Geller at Steve Geller, WWL, who just decided to leave and is now back.
Whoops.
Not sure what happened. Did he close
out the tab? I was closing tabs and clicked the wrong one. Yes.
I've done that.
Guilty.
But all right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Steve, any parting thoughts?
No, tune into Sports Talk 4 to 8 for all the latest on the Black and Gold and much more.
Oh, yeah. All right. Who dat? Peace out. Go Saints.
Who dat?